of Education, what did you think when you saw Democratic lawmakers trying to get into the Department of Education earlier today?
Well, I see the same ones. I see Maxine Waters, a lowlife. I see, all these people. They don't love our country. They don't love our country.
So as the USAID building is being closed down in D.C. and mass firings are underway, as we previously reported, the Marco Rubio plan is to reduce the size of the USAID workforce from 14,000 people to just a couple of hundred. The USAID workers who were subverting the United States and embezzling a lot of taxpayer dollars to blatant corruption for a very long time are now in tears that they are being fired and their agency more or less is basically being shut down. And keep in mind, when we say they are in tears, we're not just exaggerating or trying to make a metaphor. No, as you can see right here, they are standing outside their building, literally in tears. So we'll give you that full story here today. First, do us a big favor, make sure you're subscribed. According to the statistics, about 70% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed. Hit that red button and ensure that we can keep doing this work. Number one way to support. And with that said, I think we should start here because, of course, on a very human level, anytime someone loses their job, you want to feel bad for them, right? That's your natural instinct to take pity on these people, and that's exactly why the media is trying to run these headlines. So before you get a little bit too compassionate, I want everyone to have a brief reminder of just a surface level, right? Just the tip of the iceberg of what USAID was spending its money on. So here is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to give everyone that very important reminder again before you start to feel too bad for these people all being fired.
And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look, because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
And again, before you feel too bad, those are literally just the surface level, tip of the iceberg examples. Here is a more comprehensive list of things that USAID has been spending money on. As a few more examples, $7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language. $20 million for a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. Yes, $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq. $4.5 million to combat misinformation in Kazakhstan. $1.5 million for art for inclusion of people with disabilities. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala, $6 million to transform digital spaces to reflect feminist democratic principles, $2.1 million to help the BBC value the diversity of Libyan society, $10 million worth of USAID funded meals, which went to an Al-Qaeda linked terrorist group, $25 million for Deloitte to promote green transportation in the country of Georgia, $6 million for tourism in Egypt, $2.5 million to promote diversity and inclusion in Vietnam, $16.8 million for a separate inclusion group in Vietnam. Guys, you basically get the point, but that's why I say you really cannot feel too bad for these people, because it is deeper than waste. I want to make that very clear to everyone. There's a lot of corruption going on here. When you look at, for instance, the domestic spending of USAID, it becomes abundantly clear that, a lot of this is being funneled to certain non-governmental organizations that certain politicians may have interest in. I don't know, just saying. And even deeper than that, you see what they're doing here? Again, it's wrong to categorize this as just waste. They're trying to nation build around the world. That's why they're trying to spread all of this stuff to these other nations. And what are they nation building on behalf of is wokeness, right? This is literally like a spreading of the woke mind virus, the woke empire, whatever you want to call it, around the globe. And, one of a really bad example, I would argue, of so-called American imperialism. It's not even American imperialism, it's like woke imperialism. But nonetheless, with that understood and with that in mind, now we can sit back and laugh at these USAID workers who are now out of a job, and we can do so with a clean conscience, knowing that a serious corruption and embezzlement of taxpayer dollars is no longer happening. So here's the article from the Daily Mail. As you can see, traumatized USAID worker who survived the DOGE bloodbath describes the horror of watching everyone get fired. Now, it's worth noting that if this USAID worker is leaking this information to the press, hopefully we can figure out who that is, because there's kind of an issue there. But nonetheless, here you go. A USAID worker who managed to survive the widespread cuts by DOGE has described the horror of watching their co-workers being fired. Obviously, President Trump has gone scorched earth against this agency, and amidst huge layoffs at the agency, one staff member described to NPR how during a virtual staff meeting on Monday, people started leaving one by one as their access was cut off. It's literally like, I don't know, The Purge or something. That's kind of funny to see, right? The staffer said it was like from a horror film. Unbelievable. After the administration ordered at least 8,000 staffers and contractors onto permanent leave or furlough. There is no bottom to this stupidity, a separate USAID staffer told the public broadcaster. Another added that the government might as well shut it all down. 290 people will not be able to do anything. Well, I dare to say, USAID staffer, I think that's kind of the point there. But the Trump administration apparently had originally planned to keep 297 staff. That number has now risen to 611, according to a notice issued late on Thursday night. So apparently we're saving a few more jobs. People can be happy about that. But still, you're talking about a reduction from 14,000 workers to 611. That's pretty drastic. But here you go. Now it starts to get good. On Friday, one worker could be seen crying as crews used duct tape to block out the agency name on a sign outside of its headquarters, as they also tore down large lettering over the entranceway. So obviously, as we talked about in a prior video, they have shut down the building in DC for USAID. They've canceled the lease, and they've now fittingly here handed it over to the Border Patrol. Okay, that's the new Border Patrol headquarters. So what you have going on is a counterproductive and subversive agency now being redirected for one that is actually necessary to our national security and national prosperity. That's the change, okay? That is Make America Great Again right there. But anyways, as you can see here, Trump wrote earlier on his Truth Social that USAID is driving the radical left crazy, and there's nothing they can do about it because the way in which the money has been spent, so much of it fraudulently, is totally unexplainable. The corruption is at levels rarely seen before it closed down. And as you can see right here, that is apparently Christina Dreyer, a 2-year employee for USAID, wiping away tears after a worker removed the agency's sign on their headquarters on February 7th. So there you go. Wow! No more Sesame Street in Iraq. I can't believe this. This is so emotional, guys. This is like the worst day ever. This is a dark day, right? Democracy dies in darkness. And meanwhile, we have the Elon Musk reaction. Yeah, I think that's pretty fitting. You know, he's just like, all right, what up? And then you have her crying as they take down the agency's sign. It is pretty hilarious. The DOGE social media account celebrated the event, sharing images of all of this. He went on to say, your tax dollars should be spent on America, or the government should just tax you less. He wrote on X on Tuesday, and I don't exactly think that those concepts are mutually exclusive. But now here's what's apparently going to be happening at USAID. The remaining USAID staff includes employees who specialize in health and humanitarian assistance, the New York Times reported. And isn't that so interesting? Isn't that so interesting? Because the fear-mongering we heard from Democrats all week long about this agency was basically, there's no more humanitarian aid. You know, they're fighting the AIDS epidemic, and now it's going to spread worldwide. They're fighting disease. They're feeding the poor, the hungry. Well, as you can see right here, right? The staff they're keeping behind are literally the ones for health and humanitarian assistance. Now, one can make the case, arguably, that it's really not America's job to feed the poor and hungry of the rest of the world. It's the job to feed the poor and hungry of this nation. But nonetheless, okay, just to point that out, with all the fear mongering, the actually essential people, the arguably like necessary, or maybe even not even necessary, but just like less ridiculous work of USAID is literally still in place. So these Democrats are out in the streets protesting, protect the corruption for nothing, right? So the essential people are being kept. It's the people who are involved in the mass corruption who are being fired. And as it turns out, that is about 13,000 and a half of all of these employees. So there you have it. When the original 300 number was floated out, staff at the agency had pushed to keep more people on board, citing critical life-saving humanitarian work. And apparently those people are being allowed to stay, but nonetheless, we are still crying in this glorious picture that you see right here. Now, of course, the USAID workers are far from the only people melting down and crying about this. They are, of course, being joined, as everyone knows, by the Democrat politicians who, I will once again say, maybe there's a reason why they're so obsessed with keeping this agency. You can do the math there, but take a listen here to Senator Chris Coons of Delaware explaining why Sesame Street in Iraq is very necessary to preserving America's national security or something. Check it out.
Is funding Sesame Street a judicious use of soft power?
Well, Michael, the way you put it is the way I hope folks considering your poll today will think about it. This isn't just funding a kids show for children, millions of children in countries like Iraq. It's a show that helps teach values, helps teach public health, helps prevent kids from dying from dysentery and disease, and helps push values like collaboration, peacefulness, cooperation in a society where the alternative is ISIS, extremism, and terrorism. And to your point, it's pennies on the dollar. The U.S. Department of Defense has an annual budget of about $850 billion. USAID was spending about $30 billion. It is a small proportion of our total federal spending. And as Joe and I would often say, it's not just soft power, it's smart power. Let me leave you with one other quote, Michael, if I could. Jim Mattis, who is a 4-star Marine Corps general and Trump's Secretary of Defense in his first term, in a hearing back then said, if you slash development and aid spending, then I'm going to need more bullets for our troops.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. You thought to yourself, no way the Democrats are really going to defend Sesame Street in Iraq, right? They might say, oh, that's secondary. We're not spending a lot of money. You know, you're kind of a silly focus on that. But no, there you have Democrat Senator Chris Coons of the Appropriations Committee, which is, very fitting, more like the Inappropriations Committee that he's serving on, directly defending it. He's explaining why Sesame Street in Iraq is actually so essential for America's national security. And as you can see in kind of what he's trying to say, he's directly admitting he is nation building. We are trying to instill values into the children of Iraq, which again, it's very ironic because you would think at a certain point, the U.S. would understand after the Iraq War, after 9/11, that trying to instill values into other countries, specifically a lot of Middle Eastern countries, is really a dead-end, zero-sum game where, it turns out a lot of people don't like that, right? You're talking about a very traditional, very Islamic society. Maybe they don't want the U.S. to be spreading propaganda that goes against what they believe in to their children, right? But no, we don't even consider that. It's like, no, we are America. Everyone supports us around the world so much. And that's why we are going to spread American values. And by the way, when they say American values, they're really talking about woke values, right? But nonetheless, that's what's going to be spread to the children of Iraq. And surely the people of Iraq will not be upset that, 20 years later, we are still trying to nation build in their country. I don't know. I'm not really buying that argument, frankly, from Chris Coons. And even if it were true, even if it were correct that, hey, this is somehow a noble cause, which I would argue it's not, like it's not even virtuous, even if it were for free, what we were trying to do there. Really, you're spending American taxpayer dollars on that? How about trying to spread good values to the children of this country. We're not exactly doing a great job of that, but I don't know, whatever. So there you have all the meltdowns, right? The Democrats, the USAID workers, but nonetheless, guys, to all of these people, never fear, because here is Chuck Schumer coming to the rescue of these workers and all of the corrupt nation building. And he's really got your back, okay? This is serious, and he's really going to be doing something about it.
We will win. 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 We won't rest. We won't rest. We won't rest.
Yeah, so don't worry, guys. Okay, it may seem bad for USAID right now. They may be massively exposed. There may be mass firings happening, but you have Chuck Schumer. Okay, how is Trump ever going to come back from this video of "We will win, we will win, we won't rest"? I think we should just play that honestly at like the start of every new video we do from now on, because it's an amazing video. Okay, it's just so good. It's just so hilarious. But okay, moving on here, I want to make something clear to this discussion about the USAID workers. Don't get me wrong, it seems very likely that a lot of this nonsense was going to be cut anyway, but nonetheless, it's important to point out here that USAID literally brought this upon themselves. And why do I say that? Because when it came to DOGE trying to look into USAID, let's kind of break this down in two parts. First and foremost, what DOGE has been doing at every single federal bureaucracy is basically going to the workers and saying, look, we plan to cut a bunch of people. So asking every single worker here, what is your job? What do you do? And why is it critical and an important function for the United States, right? Basically, explain to me what you do and why you do it and how it's important. Now, this is something that I think every employee at any company or team or whatever should be able to justify, right? Here's how I contribute to the cause. Here's why your company needs me. That's probably like a basic question, even in a job interview. And it's worth pointing out here that a big problem, first and foremost, is that a lot of these federal workers have literally not been able to answer that, right? What do you do for a living? Why is it important? They can't really justify it, and that's kind of a core reason why they're being fired to begin with.
I was nervous and reticent to come up here and speak just for retaliation purposes. I just wanted to share some things that are going on at my agency. In the last week, we had Elon Musk in our building, and after he visited the building, called for a 50% cut of the entire agency. My colleagues are getting 15-minute one-on-one check-ins with 19, 20, and 21-year-old college graduates asking to justify their existence. Supervisors are being told not to tell their staff anything, withhold information, and today we got word that supervisors must now fill out a justification form, and that there's going to be just a 30% rank and yank of all staff in my agency.
Oh my gosh, the absolute horror. The people who work for the federal government, work for the taxpayer, you pay for these people's salary, are being asked to justify what they do for a living, right? Explain their job title, why it's important, and why it is necessary to be paid for by taxpayer dollars. This is so traumatizing. We can't believe this. People are being asked to explain what they do. Unbelievable, guys. This is just so unprecedented. So that's part one of this. Okay, a lot of USAID workers could not literally justify why their roles were essential to the United States. But furthermore, it's also worth noting, as Marco Rubio has pointed out, they tried to play nice, right? DOGE and the Trump administration tried to play good cop here. And what happened when they asked USAID to turn over information is that USAID was literally refusing, right? They were literally not cooperating because this agency seems to think that it is above any accountability. Their boss is not the government, the American people. They just do whatever they want. And, again, that's why I say you brought this upon yourselves. You could have cooperated. You could have tried to make this easy. And who knows, maybe we would have had a little more sympathy for these people. But after this type of behavior, how could you feel bad for any of these federal employees who are getting the boot? Honestly.
Can it be reformed, or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator.
I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are some, this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do that makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
Yeah, so the central theme here, I think, for all of these people is literally just womp womp, okay? Like, I'm sorry, I don't really feel all that bad. It would be one thing if, these were just innocent people who, just lost their livelihoods for no reason. You guys were actively undermining and subverting the national interests of the United States, of the American people. You thought you weren't accountable to the taxpayers. We were paying for your salary for all this nonsense, all this crap. And it's done. It's over, okay? You're done. You can go cry outside the building all you want. Chuck Schumer can chant, "We will win." You're not going to win. It's done. It's over, okay? And it's going to be very hard, frankly, to justify how you're going to somehow get back in this position when this is what you were spending your money on. But nonetheless, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.